Hey everybody, Chris here from It's Mead Made, and today I am going to be masking this Squirtle for Airbrush. So I've already got his shell airbrushed, and you can kind of see that it's darker around the edges, and I masked it off, and I just had to keep going because this paint wasn't sticking too well. So you can kind of see how some of the last mask was bleeding through, but that isn't really a worry. And that's honestly why I chose to mask this first. But I've got that part done. Now I've got to do the soft shell, which is the stomach. So I am going to be going through my process of how I mask off all of this. So when I'm done, it's basically going to be a ball of tape and you're just going to see the stomach. And that's pretty much it. And it's going to take a little bit of time. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask them. And I'm just going to get started. I'll explain the stuff I'm using along the way. Probably the main thing that I'm going to be using for the most part when I'm masking, my main tools are tweezers, and I have a set of tweezers that I bought, and they are fantastic. So I've got these they're like spatula tweezers. Then I've got these needle tweezers to be able to grab pieces of tape. And the other thing is I have this long skewer. I had a shorter one, but this one works really good just because it is a point. Anything, a toothpick, anything really works for this because you need to be able to kind of push stuff into the creases, and this works fantastic. And I honestly don't mind that it's really long because a toothpick sometimes is hard to grab, and I find skewers work really well. I could cut this in half if I wanted to. Actually, here we go. I got a utility knife right here. Might as well. There we go. I cut it in half. Congratulations, me. So, yeah, I actually bought a big pack of these. I think it was a pack of 50 at the dollar store. And I use them all the time to even, put my paints on, to just hold them while they're drying and things like that. You'd be amazed by a skewer of like all the things you can do with it. Then I've got my masking tape. I've got two different kinds of masking tape. I've got this is the same type. Both of these is just different thicknesses. This is the Tamaya. I think that's how you say it. I never pronounce it right, but it's fantastic. It's kind of the high-end masking tape. And then I have my regular blue painter's tape. And my general process is I will mask all of the fine edges with this stuff and this, but then all of the wider areas just to cover up so you don't see paint, like I will actually just mask it off like that. But anywhere where paint is actually touching, I use this stuff because you'll see as I get going, it really just works amazing, and it actually bends into creases. This stuff doesn't. It's really just kind of to block off stuff. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I always go for the easiest areas first because I'm honestly just always scared to get into some of these areas. And the problem areas that I'm going to be having are these areas right here in between. So you can see that little gap right there. That's going to be some of my biggest issues right here, masking around that and in between this foot to be able to paint this area because I don't want my masking tape to block this. And then that's going to be really the biggest issue because here I'm just going to let it come down, and I don't care about getting it on the bottom because you don't even see it, because I don't even worry about cleaning up the bottom. As you can see from the Resin SLA print, you can still see some of the supports, and it's hollow. So I honestly don't care because he always sits like this. But that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And the other most important thing is an X-Acto knife. You absolutely need an X-Acto knife. And I always keep a set of blades on hand. And I always switch out and put a new blade in every single time I go to cut. Even if it's still sharp, I want this thing as sharp as I can physically get it. These are like $8 for like 100 of them, and I don't care. So I'm going to go ahead now and get started. And like I said, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I kind of do a little bit of pre-measuring. So it's about right there. And I'll just tear it for this. And I basically just overlap my section to kind of show you here. So if this is my edge right here, I will actually just kind of overlap it a little bit. I'll never put it right up against the edge. I always overlap it so you can fold it and cut it away. Because when you just put it against the edge like this, there are always going to be gaps and paint is going to get up underneath it. So I will always do that. So that is one of the first things that I have learned early on. Let me try to get this. And I just take the tweezers to help push it in the center. And the key is you really don't want it to set until you've got it in its spot. And then I will gently start pushing and try not to rip the tape. And I'm kind of going along the edge like this. I'm not going in with the point because that'll actually rip it. And then the other beautiful tool is the X-Acto knife. Before you cut it, you can actually flip it around and just use the back of it because it is not sharp. And get in there and get a firm stick on it. Then I'll just go ahead and cut it. And I'll use the edge of my knife to just lift it up, and then my tweezers to pull it away. And already it tore, so I'm going to do it again. Which happens. Like sometimes it'll tear in a weird spot. And just to be honest, masking can get very, very, very tedious. There we go. Actually, that helped a lot now that I actually cut it to the shape of the stomach. Now it fits a lot easier. There we go. And that's looking a lot better. So there we go. And try to get it. I'll lift it back up in this corner and try to make the paint or the tape fold to the corner easier. And there we go. Then take the back edge of my blade, try to get a nice hard edge, and I'll go ahead and start cutting it. And the nice thing is if you've got a very sharp blade, you don't have to push hard on it, and it will not damage your print in any way, or your model, whatever you might be masking. It doesn't have to be a 3D print. And there we go. And also, if you're cutting in the creases, you'll never really see any cuts. Okay, so now I got that edge, and when you're taking off the tape, it will sometimes peel back up, and that is perfectly fine, because all you got to do is just take your skewer or stick or anything you're using and just rub it back down. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this off because littler pieces work better. There we go. And there's a tiny little area I want to cover up better, and I'm going to just use this. Cut a tiny piece off, and I'm going to place it with my tweezers. And there we go. So you can kind of see how there's just a tiny bit of lip right there. That's enough for me to actually cut with my utility knife or my X-Acto knife. And it'll get me a really nice clean edge. And it's right at the corner of the arm too. So it gives me a spot for my next piece of tape. Okay. And I'll take the back edge of my X-Acto knife again to just kind of squeeze it in that corner a little better, and then I'll cut it. And there we go. And I just slide my knife underneath it, and it'll just come right off like that. Alexander, how you doing, man? Thanks for stopping by. Okay. So there we go. Now I'm going to start moving down. I typically will, when I'm masking stuff off, I'll just go all the way around the edge. I know I've seen some people that just take care of the big areas first, but I kind of look at it at, I'm going to have to get to it eventually, so might as well just take care of it while I'm there. So for this arm, just get a little piece. Hope I win that raffle. Yeah. Best of luck to you. I've got, for those of you that don't know, I'm running a raffle right now. It's a giveaway for a custom 3D printed Rick and Morty of your choosing from Mar Pros, which ironically, Mar Pros 3D also modeled this Squirtle. And I hit 3,000 followers on Instagram, and I figured my followers are so awesome, like Alexander here, and wanted to do something to, you know, kind of give to them. So I went ahead and did that, and I've reached out to Mar Pros, the creator of this, and asked him if I could use one of his models, and he was all for it. He thought it was awesome to do it, because he is the creator of these. He's generally an awesome guy. I have talked to him quite a bit, and yeah, so I've gotten, looks like you're getting a lot of competition there, Alexander. It's there's a lot of people entering, a lot more than I was expecting for sure, but never know. Okay, so I actually, if you see here, I actually sliced it off at his hand so I can use smaller pieces and wrap it around. Need to get into printing models, but most of the time I'm printing the 1/10 RC car items. Yeah, I've actually got a friend at work that's gotten into RC cars, and he's about to get a 3D printer. I actually showed him your Instagram. And he thought it was pretty sweet. He was actually wanting to make some stuff like that too. All right. And there we go. So now I got the rest of that arm. And like I said before, like after every single time I make a cut and mask this properly, I'll always like rub back over it to make sure that it's adhering to the edges really well, because right now that is a super clean cut. And that's pretty much it. So here we go. This hand is honestly going to be terrible, but we'll see. Some of these smaller areas, like actually behind here, painting behind here with an airbrush was very difficult because getting the air in a certain way. And I've got a really nice airbrush too. All right, so we're going to just cut some of this. So much masking, I'd lose it into that detail. Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people don't want to do all the extra time to mask things. And if you're ever wondering, like, because some people have reached out to me and private messaged me of like, how do you do that? And how can you get it looking, your paints looking like they do? And it's really about masking. If you want to level up a lot of your stuff, like masking it's how you can get a lot of those gradients, highlights. Here. So like I just did this Charmander and he turned out really great, but you can see honestly only the face and toes are actually, or the eyes and mouth are the only thing that I did not airbrush. This entire model was airbrushed and masked. So, but you can kind of see the definition, like I gave the legs, and you can also see like the edges, like this was all masked. So, and masking's the way to go. I am a firm believer in it. And like I did the same thing with this Bulbasaur, like his bulb is all masked off, but I did a lot more hand painting on him just because I liked him so much. Hand painting's a lot of fun for me. But yeah, so you can see where Mar Pros has hooked me up with these models and to print and share with everybody. So Squirtle is his favorite, and he just told me today that Squirtle's his favorite because I sent him some pictures of once I finished the shell, and he told me it was his favorite. If I'd have known that, I would have started with this one for him. Because Bulbasaur is my favorite, and that's why I kind of started with Bulbasaur. Oh, thanks a lot. These things have been so much fun to paint. I mean, you run into some models sometimes that you're just like, you've got a smile on your face every single time you got a brush in your hand or something. But yeah, I've really had fun painting these. Thanks a lot. Okay, so got underneath those fingers. I don't know if you can see it too well. And there we go. And the nice part about this guy is I chose not to do a lot of shading on his actual skin. The only thing I actually did was I did a very light coat of gloss light blue on him and airbrushed him, so you can see how shiny he is, because I want him to look a little wet since he is Squirtle. And in comparison to the other guys, you can see how much shinier he is. And I did a very, very light coat. So even if my mask doesn't work out, I'm definitely going to be able to just take a brush and touch up. And that's the nice thing about this. And that's kind of why I chose to do it exactly like this. Just for that sheer fact. To kind of give myself a safety net. Never tried resin printing. Is it expensive or basically just as expensive as PLA? I would say it's more expensive than PLA for sure. So a bottle of resin, well, it really depends, I guess. A little caveat is it depends on what your filament you're using, because some of those higher end filaments are more expensive. But my filament I use is usually around the $20 range, and a bottle of resin is about $30. And the one thing about getting into resin printing or SLA printing is it's a lot more expensive to start. Instead of, you just spend money on a printer and a spool of filament and you're ready to go. SLA is way different because you have a lot more processing, and like you have to like I bought a cure station because this stuff is toxic before you actually touch or before you actually cure it. And so I went ahead and bought a cure station to make it easier on me. And you can make your own. It's basically just a box with aluminum foil in it, and then you get an ultraviolet light. And then you also need to wash it in alcohol before you cure it. And then you need to buy gloves, cleaning supplies to make sure, you keep everything nice and clean. Like I've got another one of these silicone mats over there on my resin station, just so if any resin gets on it, I can just take it outside and cure it by the sun, and to keep my mess contained. But yeah, it's a different beast. It took me a while. I've been doing it for resin printing for almost a year, and it has been a big learning experience. But I'm right now to the point now where everything I print just turns out well. I do not have as many fails as I do with filament printing, and to be honest, I really don't get a lot of fails with filament printing because I've been printing with FDM for going on 7 years now. So I've been in the racket a long time. I've experienced just about every kind of failure you can come across. And I know Alexander, have come through quite a few fails too and figuring out some issues. All right, so as you can see, so while I'm jabbing here, or gabbing, I'm just going through, and now I've got all the way around his hand, and now I'm to the back portion, getting up into his armpit. And you can see that masking does take a while, but typically it is well worth it because I'm going to do this as a light tan color as his belly. It's like more of a cream, and then I'm going to go a darker to get underneath his head for that big bulbous head to have a nice shadow on. And then I'm going to kind of get underneath here so when he sits, you can kind of see some shadows underneath here. Seeing that long process makes me appreciate your work a lot more. Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, it's a labor of love. It's truly a hobby I just enjoy. So this is my kids are in bed and my wife's upstairs watching TV, and I just kind of come down to my workstation here and just start playing. It's truly a passion project. All right, so I'm trying to get it to a point on here so I can actually just stick it directly in his armpit and try to start there and work my way out. Which sometimes the tape wants to hold in areas you don't want it to go in first, but other times it will want to listen to you. There we go. And when you get a big piece like this, it's always okay to like kind of split it and make a Y, just so you can have it keep following the path you want. Okay. And we'll go ahead, slice this. Well, awesome. I'm glad to see that you've been able to solve your issue. I know for my FDM printers, I love my glass beds. I rarely get any kind of issues with them. But it's one of those things, everybody's different and every single printer is different, even if you have the same one. I know I have two Ender 3 Pros, and one of them I always have to heat the filament a little hotter than the other. Even though they're supposed to have the same extruder, but they act different. It's like I always tell people, like, if you want to get into 3D printing, I hope you like the hobby of troubleshooting, because that is a huge amount of the hobby is troubleshooting. All right. So that armpit was a big pain in the butt, but I got it now. So now just kind of trim this out. And there we go. Whew. So there's the edge of the shell. And going back over it with the toothpick here. Okay. And if anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to ask. This is a very tedious thing, so give you an idea of how to mask or anything like that, I'm more than happy to explain what I'm doing or how I'm doing it if you've missed previously. Okay. And I'm basically just putting this on here and rubbing the crease with the toothpick and then cutting it and doing that over and over until all of Squirtle is done. Just taking little pieces off at a time and getting tape all over me. Okay. One more piece and we got the top of the leg done. Sometimes you gotta double it here. Like I'll hold it with the Q-tip and push it in with the skewer or your toothpick or whatever you might have. And there we go. And still have a tiny piece left. Hopefully I can get it. I need to 3D print a holder for this guy. It's the beauty of 3D printing. If you need something, you can just print it. Okay. One more piece. And just to let you guys know that if you really like this model, you can actually get it on Cults 3D. This was modeled by a friend of mine named Pros 3D. And he has a lot of fantastic models that he has made. He's made the more basic Pokemon that they look exactly like, you know, the game, but then he went ahead and made these with a lot of personality and a lot cuter. Like I showed these earlier, but I got the Bulbasaur done, and I also have the Charmander done. So now I'm working on the Squirtle to get the full original starter. But yeah, so Pros 3D, and it's an underscore 3D. And I'll put a link to his profile in the description when I'm done with this stream, just so you can see it. But yeah, if you want to support him, because he is a super great guy. Okay. Now I get to move back to bigger areas. And I'm going to just kind of touch that right there. And try to slide this in between. And there we go. So the key is when you're bringing in a piece of tape, and it might seem like common sense, and if it is to you, awesome. That just means you're going to be really good at masking. But when you're bringing it in, you want it to touch the area that you're going to take it off first. So like anywhere on the soft shell is where I want it to touch first, and then it will drag towards and up. So it'll go in and then it'll come out, and then I can keep pushing it around so it doesn't get caught, like say on the leg. That is one of the keys here. So like I'm starting right here and then I'm pushing up towards the leg instead of starting at the leg and trying to push it down. It's something that will save you a lot of headache if you kind of learn that early. And so now I just got to keep pushing it and then wrap it around. So you can kind of see how I got it on there. I started right here on this corner with my tweezers, and then I kept pushing and going up. So that is one of the biggest keys I have found when it comes to masking. And right now, I'm just using the back of my X-Acto blade to get it into the holes. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there we go. And this Tamiya masking tape is absolutely fantastic because you can see how it, honestly, it's almost like a saran wrap. Like it will just like mold and twist and fold to your model. When you're using this stuff, it does not. It's pretty rigid. That's why I use this for blocking off all of the big areas. So like I will tape that to this area and wrap it around the face to block it. All right, so got that little piece off. All right, so now I'm going to just cut it. And the adhesion on this tape is really low. So it comes off really easy. Alexander, I'm really glad you recommended a feeler gauge. Better way than a Post-it for paper. Oh, for FDM printing, yeah. I strongly recommend to everyone to get a feeler gauge because I'm actually working on a video for YouTube explaining my entire process and theory behind why you never want to use a Post-it to level your bed. Because I actually work with engineers. I'm not an engineer, I'm an artist, obviously. And I do a lot of video production and stuff like that for engineers. And I have learned a ton from them. And I was talking to them and explaining that I started using a feeler gauge instead of a Post-it, and they thought it was the craziest thing on the planet that people use a Post-it as a measuring tool. They compared it to, let me go get a stick outside and I'm going to use that as a yardstick because it's still a stick. I was like, well, that's what it is. So, yeah, I actually picked it up from working with a bunch of engineers at work, and it's a very precise way of measurement. And for something that is essentially a CNC machine, it makes no sense to use a piece of paper. Because I actually did a little bit of a study on it, and there was like a huge difference between a Post-it and copy paper, and even different brands of Post-its were different. So you would actually go from like a 0.08 measurement to a 0.1 measurement, and it would never be the same. So it's one of those things that if you switch brands, then you're going to realize that you can't level it anymore. And it has nothing to do with how you were leveling your bed on your FDM printer. So this is a little too big. All I'm doing here is covering up this hand so I don't have to use blue painter's tape. And there we go. I am nearly done with half of this, and 38 minutes in. Yeah, I have a fun job. I do video production and training and stuff like that. Which is always fun because I go home I'm working on like $10,000 cameras, and I come home and I do all of this stuff on my iPhone. It's like I don't have to worry about the technology when I'm doing this. Just the paint. All right, there's half of him. So that is pretty much half of the Squirtle. And I'm probably, since this, I think I'll keep going just a little bit longer. I might get his arm and his leg. I won't bother you guys with this part and see how well that goes before I end this, because it's been 40 minutes. Try not to make these super long. All right, so like I said, I try to make it touch the shell first, and then I'll bring it into the crease like that. And then it just wraps in nicely. Then you can use your fingernail, then switch to your toothpick. And there we go. Just that easy until you get to the bottom of the hand. All right. Then go back over. And I have a hole up here in the corner, so I'm going to have to patch that. That's all this is. And that's why I like painting big busts, because the masking, if I ever do any, is always so easy. This stuff is always so tedious. I've actually got a Captain America I'm going to be starting shortly. After I'm done with Squirtle, I'm going to be painting a Mandalorian bust for my son. He is obsessed with the Mandalorian. And he saw that bust and really wanted it, so I'm going to be painting that for him. And here you guys go. I'll show you a sneak preview here. This actually just came off the printer today. Dark side. The unfortunate part is I had a clogged nozzle right here, if you see it, and I was able to stop it and catch it in time. And then I actually unclogged it and let it keep going. So like the rest of the model is perfect. So everything below is beautiful and everything above. So I've got this area that I've got to fix up. But yeah, so I'm actually probably going to do another video on how I repair this. So because there's ways that if you can figure out how to get your nozzle unclogged and resume your print, if it's not a huge amount like this, you can actually save it. And I'm going to make a video later on how you can actually repair a 3D print, because there are lots of ways and tons of people have ideas out there. But yeah. So how did the costume? Oh yeah, speaking of the Mandalorian, I actually 3D printed an entire costume for my son. Did a big cosplay thing, and I found a bunch of costume pieces and things like that, and then I made the rest for Halloween. And it was funny because I just scaled it down 70%. Like I was buying like an adult cosplay like 3D files to print, and had to scale it all down to 70%. But yeah, it went awesome. Like he did have his helmet sitting down here. He still plays with that helmet and his blaster and stuff. Like it was probably one of the best Halloweens ever. And if you guys are curious, you can go to my Instagram and see. I posted a bunch of pictures of it. It was pretty much all I was doing for the 2 weeks before Halloween. So all of my Instagram feed was nothing but Mandalorian pieces and parts being printed. All right. So I'm pretty much there. I'm just kind of patching an unimportant area right there. Okay. So that's good, and I'll just do this little piece and show you how I do some of my blue tape, and then we'll go ahead and probably end this stream, but we'll do one more piece here. So like I was saying, I'm going to just kind of touch the area first that I want to walk up to, and just slowly bring it to it. And sometimes your tape will want to flip the wrong way, and you just kind of force it, and it will go, especially if you're using this tape. It has a lot of give to it. So one of the things that I have not discussed here is sometimes when you're doing it, your tape won't bend anymore. And instead of like getting a huge crease, sometimes it's best to just cut your losses here, no pun intended, and literally just cut it and then just wrap it back. And then you can get another piece to put there. So you can kind of see how I cut it and just kept going with the crease. It makes it a lot easier on you, because as you can see, I am not afraid to just grab another piece of tape, because looking at his arm, it looks like he broke it. So I'll go ahead and grab another piece. And if anybody has any questions specifically about this or anything else 3D printing or painting, feel free to ask. Or I'll just keep babbling on. So I can already tell, just because of the curvature of his leg, I'm going to have to cut this in half. And then hold that for later. Figure out how I want to place it. And there we go. And after a while of doing this, you really start to understand how much you can bend and how much the tape will give and how much it won't. And it really just takes time. You got to put hours into it. And as you can see, I would probably have quite a few hours under my belt if I actually counted. Because we're doing this Squirtle, and it's been 47 minutes of getting that. And I still have the hard part, which is the pocket right here, that I've already accomplished over here. So it would probably take me, in total, an hour and a half to actually get this guy completely done. And then the funniest part is when I take it to the spray booth to airbrush this stomach, I probably will spend 10 minutes over there and then rip all of this off. Sometimes you just like want to cry. But when you see the end results, it makes you really happy. Okay. I think this will be my last piece I place. And of course, it's going to be the most pain. Okay. There we go. And I can already see that it's not sticking. Here, let me see if I can show you. Right here, see how it's coming off? So it's not sticking there. So I am, once again, just going to cut it so it will wrap. And this is the part where you truly, truly, truly want to have a sharp blade, because there's nothing up against this, and I'm still able to cut it. So you will count yourself lucky after you have a nice sharp blade. So there we go. So I cut that, so now it bent a lot better against the leg. It's almost kind of like origami. If you've ever done origami, you know if you cut things in a certain way or fold things in a certain way, it'll keep taking a shape. Same thing applies right here. Except for this is the kind of origami that very few see. unless you see the process itself like you are now. And there we go. Now I'm just going to cut and be done for this for right now. And I'm just letting the knife follow the groove. That's all I'm doing. Okay. All right, Alexander, you have a good one. Thanks for stopping by, man. Okay. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I just figured I'd do a live while I'm sitting here doing all this tedious stuff. But and if you're on Instagram, feel free to hit me up over there, and you can give me a follow, and I will probably be posting my results of this in the next day. Probably tomorrow I'll get it in the Airbrush booth, and I always do time lapses of me painting in the Airbrush booth. I can't just do lives in there because it's so loud. But yeah, if you want to see the end results of this, feel free to follow me on Instagram. And if you're not on Instagram, I'm actually doing, I just hit 3,000 followers, and I'm doing a giveaway that somebody from Instagram was on here and just mentioned earlier that I'm giving away a Rick and Morty 3D print and paint. So if you like Rick and Morty, you actually get to choose the character out of I think there's like 10 characters, 9 characters. And it's from the same artist that modeled this, Pros 3D. Super fantastic artist. He does amazing 3D sculptures for 3D printing. All right. So there we go. I got all around his leg now. And we are good to go. So now the last part that I'm going to go over, because I'm not going to finish this little pocket, I'll do this later, but just to show you how I put this on. So I will look at the model first, and then I'll take some pieces of tape and start. Typically I'll start small and then I'll get a lot bigger, but like looking here of how this has a little area right here and right there, I'll actually just throw a piece of tape right over all of it and then just kind of start sticking stuff to it. And sometimes you're going to have to make little slices in the tape, and realizing that this tape is a lot thicker, so you're going to have to kind of put a little force and mask on top of that. So now his entire shoulder is completely covered. And the other thing you can do is you can actually take saran wrap and wrap all the way around him. And I might even do that for this guy. But first off, I'm just going to take this stuff. And it's just low adhesive painter's tape. Because if you leave it on here for a long period of time, it will pull the paint. But we're talking, I'm going to probably throw this in the booth tonight or tomorrow morning first thing, and I'll be able to pull it off. The other thing, you never want to use this stuff if your paint is wet. I know that seems like a dumb thing to say, but when I say paint is wet, I typically give my paint 24 hours before I start masking. So I actually painted this guy last night, and Now I'm just now getting to masking. So sometimes I'm not waiting for paint to I'm not waiting for actually the paint to dry. It's more I'm waiting for it to like harden and cure, so I don't have to worry about ruining it when I'm masking things off. So all of this stuff I've painted, and it's sat and dried pretty well, because when you peel it off, it's not going to come off. But that's pretty much it. That is my process. Just to keep showing you here, I'll get at least one side of him. And I'm just getting little pieces and adding them here and there. So like, this is probably an important thing to note right here. So on the tip of his toe, on this round piece, this stuff is garbage for that kind of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and use this and just use it for masking. And I'll just put a piece of that on top, because I can wrap it around the edge easier. So I'll just go in from the side, wrap that down, and wrap it around the toe like that. And then I'll also take my tweezers, my toothpick, whatever I can, to make sure that that actually adheres really well to it. And that's it. So then I also noticed that there's another spot. Because the big thing of reason why I'm not using this for every single thing is only because this stuff is more expensive. And I'm not saying it's like crazy expensive, but it is more expensive than like a pack of these. So I usually am very hesitant to just like throw it all over the model. And by usually, I mean I never do. So yeah. And all I'm doing is continuing to wrap all the way around him, just because I don't want any overspray. And with my airbrush, I can probably not even have to do any more to this on this side, because I can have a focus stream here, and I can just get right here, and then I can go in and hit right here. In between that little crack right there is going to be a pain in the butt. I can already tell that, but I'll be able to still get it. But yeah, so that is my process. I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest. But I hope you've liked this stream, and if you're not a subscriber and you want to support the channel, please feel free to support me, and I'll keep making these videos. And you can also follow me on Instagram, like I said, and even reach out to me. And if you're looking for any specific help with anything, I'll make a video on it. That's honestly my favorite thing to do. A lot of my videos that have nothing to do with painting for just 3D printing is all user driven. People have just asked me. So yeah, thanks a lot. And as always, I just hope you have a great day. Bye.